It started with a road trip, a last-minute plan born out of boredom and wanderlust. Sarah, Jake, and Mia, best friends since college, piled into Sarah's old van with snacks, a playlist, and a destination 3 states away. An abandoned ghost town rumored to be haunted. They called it a spooky detour. A joke. Somewhere around midnight, the van rolled through a quiet stretch of highway surrounded by dense woods. The road was empty except for the 3 of them, the hum of the engine, and an unsettling silence. Jake broke it with his usual sarcasm. Who wants to bet this road has a ghost story? I'd say 80% chance of a creepy hitchhiker, Mia replied with a grin, munching on a bag of chips. But Sarah didn't laugh. She stared at the rearview mirror, her hands tightening on the wheel. Guys, she said, her voice low, don't look, but I think someone's sitting in the back seat. Jake snorted, nice try, not falling for it. Mia turned her head casually, then froze. The chips fell from her hand. There's no one there, Mia, Jake said, waving his hand in the air. Mia didn't respond. Her face had gone pale. She whispered, Jake, look again. The van swerved as Sarah turned her head briefly, heart pounding. The road ahead blurred, but she couldn't shake the reflection in her rearview mirror, a shape, darker than the shadows, hunched in the back corner. Okay, this isn't funny, Jake said, turning fully around. But as he stared, his face drained of color. It was faint, like a smudge on glass, but it was there. A shape too solid to be a trick of the light. Sarah yanked the wheel, pulling the van to the shoulder. Everybody out, now. They scrambled out into the cold night air, hearts racing. The van sat idly, its headlights casting long beams into the woods. There's nothing in there, Jake said after catching his breath, but even he sounded unconvinced. Mia shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. I saw it. It was watching us. Sarah grabbed her flashlight. Let's check the van. Jake sighed. And if it eats us? Sarah's voice was firm. We can't just leave it. Whatever it is, we need to know. They climbed back into the van, searching every crevice, but the shadow was gone. Sarah adjusted her mirror, only to freeze again. Written in condensation on the glass was a single word. Stay. Despite the creeping fear, they decided to keep going. Stopping in the middle of nowhere didn't feel safe either. Jake tried to lighten the mood by blasting the playlist, but the van's Bluetooth refused to connect. Static crackled over the speakers instead, followed by whispers none of them could understand. Can't this thing ever work right? Jake muttered, fiddling with his phone. But Sarah wasn't listening. The GPS had rerouted itself, guiding them down a narrow, unmarked road. The trees pressed in close, their branches scraping against the van like claws. This can't be right, Mia said, her voice trembling. I didn't touch it, Sarah replied. Turn around, Mia said. Sarah tried, but the road was too narrow. The only option was to keep driving until it widened. As they moved deeper into the woods, the whispers on the radio grew louder, forming fragmented words. He waits behind. What does that mean? Jake asked, gripping his seat. Nobody answered. The road finally widened into a small clearing. They stopped, hoping to find a signal, but the moment they stepped out, the air grew heavy, suffocating. From the shadows, a faint laugh echoed, a child's laugh, high-pitched and chilling. Get back in the van, Sarah hissed, shoving Jake and Mia toward the door. But before they could, a figure stepped into the clearing of a man, his clothes tattered and eyes hollow. He looked as if he'd been walking for years. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice gravelly. Who are you? Jake asked, trying to sound brave. Doesn't matter, the man replied, glancing nervously over his shoulder. This place, it doesn't let you go. Once you see it, it sees you. What sees us? Sarah asked, her voice shaking. The man pointed to the van. You brought it with you. It's in there now. Mia gasped. What's in there? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back into the woods, disappearing into the darkness. Let's go, Sarah said, her voice breaking. As they piled into the van, something moved in the rearview mirror again, something waiting for them to drive. The van's engine sputtered, refusing to start at first. Sarah cursed under her breath, pumping the gas pedal. Finally, it roared to life, but the headlights flickered ominously. "Maybe we should walk," Mia suggested, clutching her knees. "And leave ourselves stranded out here?" "No way," Jake said. As they drove, the whispers returned, louder this time, overlapping and chaotic. Sarah turned the radio off, but the voices persisted, as if coming from the van itself. Suddenly, the van's interior lights flickered, and a cold breeze swept through, despite the windows being closed. Mia screamed as the temperature dropped sharply, her breath visible in the freezing air. "Do you feel that?" Jake whispered, his voice shaking. Sarah's hands trembled on the wheel. "It's not the cold I'm worried about." The van jolted, as if something heavy had climbed on the roof. A loud thud echoed above them, followed by scraping sounds. "What is that?" Mia cried. Jake grabbed a flashlight and opened the window, leaning out to look. A shadow darted across the roof, too fast to follow. "I don't know," Jake stammered, pulling back inside, "but it's still up there." As they approached the next bend, Sarah slammed on the brakes. Standing in the middle of the road was the same figure they had seen earlier, the hitchhiker. But this time, his face was twisted in horror, his hand pointing directly at the van. The whispers turned into a deafening roar. Something inside the van began to laugh. Sarah's foot hovered over the brake as the van skidded to a halt. The hitchhiker stood rigid in the middle of the road, his hand outstretched, as if trying to ward something off. "Do you see him?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," Mia said, barely above a whisper, "but his face, it's wrong." The hitchhiker's features seemed to shift, his hollow eyes fixed on the van. Jake, unable to stop himself, opened the door and stepped out, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Jake," Mia hissed, "get back in here." Jake ignored her and took a cautious step toward the man. "Who are you? What do you want?" The hitchhiker's mouth opened, but no words came out, only a deep, guttural growl that sent chills racing down Jake's spine. He stumbled back toward the van, but before he could reach the door, the man collapsed into the dirt, as if drained of life. "Get in the van, Jake," Sarah screamed, panic edging her voice. Jake dove inside, slamming the door just as the headlights dimmed and went out completely. The road disappeared into darkness. Then came the scratching. First on the roof, then the windows, a relentless scraping that sounded like claws against metal. "What's happening?" Mia whimpered, clutching her knees. Sarah gritted her teeth, gripping the wheel. "I don't know, but we're not staying here to find out." The engine roared to life as Sarah floored the gas pedal. The van surged forward, its tires crunching over gravel and debris. As they sped down the road, the darkness seemed to move with them, closing in like a living thing. Suddenly, the GPS chirped, its mechanical voice breaking through the chaos. "Turn left in 500 feet. Mia glanced at the screen. That can't be right. There's no road there. But as they approached, the headlights revealed a narrow dirt path veering off into the trees. Against her better judgment, Sarah swerved onto it, the van lurching as it hit the uneven ground. The GPS fell silent, and the whispers returned, louder than ever. The dirt road stretched endlessly, twisting and turning through the dense forest. The whispers filled the van, overlapping voices speaking in a language none of them could understand. Sarah's knuckles were white on the wheel, her breathing shallow. "We need to stop," Jake said, his voice shaky. "Something's wrong with this road." "Stopping won't help," Sarah snapped. "We just need to." She froze as the van jolted. The steering wheel yanked sharply to the left. Sarah fought to regain control, but it felt as if something else was driving. The van skidded to a halt, its engine sputtering before going dead. "No, no, no," Sarah muttered, turning the key repeatedly. The engine refused to start. Mia let out a gasp. "Look." In the dim glow of the interior lights, they saw it sitting in the back seat. A figure barely human, its form shifting and flickering like a static image on an old TV. Its head tilted unnaturally, hollow eyes staring straight at them. "Who are you?" Jake demanded, his voice breaking. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised one skeletal hand and pointed to the floor. Mia, trembling, leaned forward and pulled back the carpet under the middle row of seats. Beneath it was a metal hatch, the kind used for storage in custom vans. "I didn't know that was there," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. The whispers grew deafening as Jake hesitated. Then, with trembling fingers, he unlatched the hatch. Inside was a small compartment, and in it lay a journal, its leather cover stained and worn. Jake picked it up, flipping through the pages. The writing inside was chaotic scrawled notes, symbols, and maps. But one phrase was repeated over and over. "It follows the living." Jake read aloud, his voice shaking. "The van is a vessel. It carries them, and they carry it. No matter where you go, it will follow." "What does that mean?" Mia asked, her voice rising in panic. Jake flipped to another page. "The only way to escape is to give it to someone else. It needs a passenger. It always needs someone to drive it." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "No," Sarah said firmly, slamming the journal shut. "We're not sacrificing someone to this thing." "Then what do we do?" Jake asked, his face pale. "Just wait until it kills us." Before anyone could respond, the van shook violently, the windows fogging over. From outside came a low, guttural growl, followed by the sound of footsteps circling the vehicle. "We're surrounded," Mia whispered, tears streaming down her face. Sarah turned the key again, desperation taking over. This time, the engine roared to life. She didn't hesitate. She floored the gas pedal, the van lurching forward and crashing through the underbrush. The growls faded, but the whispers remained, a constant reminder that they weren't alone. The dirt path led them to an open field, the moonlight illuminating a decrepit farmhouse in the distance. The van rolled to a stop, its engine sputtering once more. "Why here?" Sarah muttered, her hand shaking on the wheel. Jake opened the journal again, flipping through the pages. "This place is marked. Look." He showed them a hand-drawn map with the farmhouse circled in red ink. Next to it was a single word: end. "We're not going in there," Mia said, backing away from the door. "We don't have a choice," Jake replied. "If this journal is right, this might be the only way to stop it." Reluctantly, they stepped out of the van, the cold air biting at their skin. The farmhouse loomed ahead, its windows like empty eyes staring at them. Inside, the air was thick with decay. The floorboards creaked under their weight as they explored, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. In the center of the living room was a strange altar, surrounded by candles long since burned out. On the altar was a photo of a grainy, black and white image of a family standing in front of the same van they had driven. "It's been here before," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Before they could process what they were seeing, the front door slammed shut, and the whispers turned into screams. The room grew cold, frost forming on the walls. Shadows moved independently of the flickering flashlight beams, twisting and writhing. Jake dropped the journal, his hands trembling. "It's here. Whatever it is, it's here." Sarah picked up the journal, frantically flipping through the pages. There has to be a way to end this. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the corner of the room, a man, gaunt and hollow-eyed, the same one they'd seen on the road. He pointed to the altar, his mouth moving soundlessly. "What does he want?" Mia whispered, clutching Sarah's arm. Sarah placed the journal on the altar, the pages flipping wildly on their own. The candles flared to life, casting an eerie glow over the room. The van's horn blared outside, long and unrelenting. "It's calling us," Jake said, his voice barely audible. "No," Sarah said, her jaw set. "It's calling one of us." The journal stopped on its final page, the words glowing faintly in the candlelight. "One stays. The rest leave." The choice was clear. But who would it be? As the whispers turned into screams, The friends faced the impossible decision, knowing that no matter what they chose, none of them would ever be the same again.